A millionaire single father sat at her table. What she discovered changed their lives forever. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron, glancing down at the clock. Another early morning at the diner, where the fluorescent lights flickered but the coffee never ran cold. It was the same routine, pouring mugs and balancing plates as she'd done for years. Yet, today felt different. The door swung open, and a gust of wind brought with it the scent of adventure. In strided Max, a fiery presence with an air of mystery. The regulars paused, eyes glued to him as he approached the counter. Their whispers, always sharp as knives, sliced through the air. "Where's a guy like that come from?" Sarah heard one of them mutter. But her attention was drawn to Max's warm smile. Those deep eyes held untold stories, and Sarah felt an instant connection. Shoving aside the tension swirling around her, she poured him a coffee, her heart racing at the thought of someone new. As he sipped, Sarah found herself captivated by tales of his life, of struggle and loss, of raising his son alone in a world that felt heavier each day. She shared about Lily, the light in her life with the wild curls and even wilder spirit. Their laughter intertwined, chasing away the shadows with each shared story, giving Sarah hope amidst her daily grind. The whispers continued, echoing through the diner, but it was Max's warmth that kept her afloat. It almost felt like destiny, a way out of the suffocating expectations that clung to her. Yet here, the town's judgment loomed like clouds, casting shadows on her dreams. Deep in her heart, she yearned for the simple joys of life, for Lily to feel secure, for their tucked-away hopes to flourish. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks, and as Max continued visiting, their friendship blossomed. But then, disaster struck. A factory closure sent ripples of despair through the town. Families were left scrambling, unable to put food on the table. Sarah felt a mix of anger and despair, her own financial struggles growing heavier. The whispers grew louder, turning from casual gossip to outright scorn. What's she think she's doing, hanging out with a wealthy man? But rather than back down, Sarah decided to take action. She found an unexpected passion for cooking, beaming with pride when Lily exclaimed her dishes were yummy. With newfound determination, she organized a community dinner, plunging into her culinary talents. Locals came together, their laughter bridged the divide that once seemed insurmountable. Joy bubbled in the air as people tucked into the comfort food that Sarah offered, letting her heart guide the way. In those moments, a spark ignited in Max. Watching Sarah's strength unfold, he realized he could be more than a provider, he could be a supportive partner in this journey. They found solace and purpose through cooking, laughter, and the shared struggle against the tide of prejudice. But just as Sarah began believing that hope could conquer the whispers, the confrontation they dreaded loomed. The very community she sought to uplift was now teetering on the edge of judgment. With her heart on the line, and the community dinner looming, Sarah wondered if her struggle would tear apart the very connections she was building, or bring everyone together in ways she'd never dared to dream. Would resilience prevail, or would fear drown out the light? The answer awaited them just around the corner. The community dinner was just 2 days away, and the air buzzed with anticipation. As Sarah set up tables outside the diner, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She could almost hear the whispers now, echoing in her mind. Despite the chatter, she focused on what truly mattered: getting people to come together. Max lent his support, his presence a soothing balm against the background noise. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, wiping his hands on a dish towel, glancing up with an encouraging smile. Sarah smiled back, but wasn't so sure. "Ready as I'll ever be. I want everyone to feel comfortable." To forget at least for one night their troubles. Max stepped closer, his voice low. You're doing something incredible here. People need this reminder that they're not alone. Right then, Sarah felt a wave of warmth wash over her. Was it possible? Could this dinner truly heal the rifts in their town? She caught a glimpse of Lily, twirling around the yard, her curls bouncing with every enthusiastic spin. Mom, can we have balloons? Lily's innocent voice burst into Sarah's thoughts, pulling her back to the present. Balloons? Sarah mused, her heart swelled with the joy that always sprang from her daughter's enthusiasm. Sure. We can have balloons. Lily squealed, and her carefree laughter spread a glimmer of reassurance in Sarah's heart. Yet, in the back of her mind, concern gnawed away. What if the naysayers didn't change their minds? What if the gathering only deepened the divide? The day of the dinner arrived, and tension crackled in the air. Sarah stood behind the serving counter, her fingers fidgeting with her apron as she watched the growing crowd. It was a mix of familiar faces and newcomers drawn in by the aroma wafting through the air. Pizza, homemade chili, and cornbread were laid out like a banquet, and the tables looked vibrant, adorned with flowers from the local market. Max arrived carrying an armful of donated desserts, the kind that made your mouth water just looking at them. He set them down and caught Sarah's eye, offering a reassuring nod. See? Look at the turnout, he smiled, though Sarah noticed the concern flickering in his eyes. Just keep smiling. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the diner, Sarah prepared herself. People began filling their plates, exchanging laughs and stories, the mood shifting in a way Sarah had hoped for but feared might never happen. Old friends reunited, neighbors who barely exchanged hellos sat together, sharing in the warmth of camaraderie. Just then, the front doors swung open with a loud creak, and in walked Dan, the factory manager who had spearheaded the closure. A palpable tension filled the air as heads turned, some whispering, others outright glaring. Sarah's heart raced, everything she built in that moment felt threatened. Thank you for the invitation, Dan said, his voice unexpectedly soft. I came to support the community. Sarah's stomach twisted. Did he mean it? Could one man's presence alter the atmosphere? She exchanged glances with Max, whose brow furrowed in concern. Let us keep it together, Max said, squeezing her shoulder for comfort. You've already come so far, Sarah. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward, ready to break through the tension. Welcome, Dan. Everyone is free to come together tonight. Let us celebrate what we have instead of what we've lost. Whispers hung in the air, muffled chatter rippling through the crowd. Would they follow her lead or let the judgment set in? Sarah's heart pounded as she opened her arms, inviting the connection she so desperately wanted. What would it take to change hearts tonight? Would the walls begin to crumble, or would the fear strike harder than before? Only time would reveal the truth. A deep breath filled Sarah's lungs as she braced for a reaction. The silence was almost unbearable. Then, a voice rang out from the back of the crowd, thick with skepticism. Why should we trust him? It was Mary, known for her sharp tongue and wariness toward change. The tension hung thick, and Sarah's chest tightened. She had hoped for unity but was met with resistance. Dan opened his mouth, ready to speak, but Sarah raised a hand to stop him. I know it's hard, she said, her voice steady yet warm. Change doesn't come easy. Eyes flicked between her and Dan, weighing the situation. But tonight, let us try. Let us try to remember what's important to be a part of this community. Max leaned in closer, nudging Sarah with elbow. You've got this, he whispered, a reassuring glint in his eye. Just then, Lily burst through the crowd, clutching a cluster of colorful balloons, her joy uncontainable. Look, everyone! I brought balloons! She shouted. The innocence in her voice cut through the tension like a knife. Some nearby chuckled, a few smiles breaking across faces that were once tight with anger. The sight of her daughter, radiating pure happiness, reminded Sarah of the purpose behind the dinner. It wasn't just about the physical gathering, it was about rebuilding connections. The soft sound of laughter rippled through the air as Lily began handing out balloons to everyone within reach. Sarah's heart warmed at the sight one small girl could shift the mood of the entire gathering. "Maybe we can give him a chance," someone called out, but the crowd was still cautious. The whispers continued, as if holding on to the past was easier than embracing the unknown. But Dan stood firm, looking out at the crowd. He took a single step forward. "I know I've made mistakes," he began, a newfound strength in his voice. "But I believe in this community, and I want to be part of the solution, not the problem." Sarah watched closely as the crowd shifted, hesitant but intrigued. There was a vulnerability in his posture that seemed to create a crack in the icy distance he had once established. "Maybe," a voice ventured from the front, "if we hear him out, we can all understand." That sparked a wave of murmurs, shifting the atmosphere from suspicion to something more cautious yet hopeful. Sarah glanced at Max, who nodded encouragingly, sensing the fragile bridge stretching before them. "Let us all sit together," Sarah suggested, hoping to capitalize on the moment. "No divisions, just people." She began to move toward Dan, inviting him to join her at the head of the table. The space between them felt like an invisible tug-of-war, and Sarah could sense the hesitation. Before she could comprehend it, others began to gather around, re-establishing connections that had long been severed. Amid the chaos, she saw Dan relax slightly, taking tentative steps into conversation with people he hadn't spoken to in years. Laughter began to bubble back into the air, mingling with the sounds of clinking dishes and muffled greetings. It was messy. It was imperfect. But it felt good. As the night wore on, Sarah found herself wandering among the tables, grateful smiles and heartwarming stories replacing doubt. There was a thrill in watching people rediscover what they had almost lost. Then, a loud cheer erupted near the dessert table as someone unveiled a giant chocolate cake, the last prize of the night. The energy surged, laughter now echoing freely, and Sarah couldn't help but beam. But in all the excitement, in the laughter and joy, she felt something shift deep inside. What if this was just the start of something she wasn't ready for? A presence loomed at her side, and she turned to find Dan right there, looking more startled than she was. "I didn't expect this reaction," he admitted, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Neither did I," Sarah replied, the weight of unspoken potential hanging heavily between them. Chills raced down her spine as recognition dawned in Dan's eyes. Would this be an opportunity to rebuild not just a community, but bonds that could strengthen their futures forever? And then came the moment when Sarah realized, maybe, just maybe, there was a deeper connection at play, a chance for new beginnings not only for the town but also for herself. What was waiting behind the surface of this dinner? Would it be the healing Sarah hoped for, or would it reveal challenges to come? The night had only just begun. The atmosphere buzzed with chatter and clinking forks, a symphony of laughter and renewed energy. Sarah's heart was still racing, caught somewhere between doubt and hope. The cake graced the center of the table, an inviting beacon of sweetness amidst the chaos. As she turned, weaving through the crowd, Dan moved past her, his hands stuffed in his pockets, a contemplative look on his face. There was something almost fragile about him in that moment. Despite the laughter around, a certain heaviness lingered in his posture. Sarah wondered what thoughts haunted him, what pieces of the past he was grappling with. "Hey," she called out, reaching for his arm gently. "What's on your mind?" He looked up, surprised. "Just taking it all in," he replied, a hint of self-deprecation in his tone. "I didn't think they'd actually give me a chance tonight." "Maybe they see something in you that's worth believing in," she said softly. "You've taken the first step. It's up to you to keep moving forward." Dan nodded slowly, then turned his gaze back to the crowd. "It's just, any misstep could push them back into fear. I don't want to let them down again. None of us can predict the future, Sarah replied, sensing an opportunity to connect more deeply. But you're here now. Engaging with them. That says a lot. Their eyes locked for just a moment, a silent understanding passing between them. A rush of emotion surged within her. Could this conversation lead to something transformative? The air was thick with excitement as Lily tugged on Sarah's sleeve, her eyes sparkling with joy. Mom, can I have a piece of cake now? Sarah beamed at her daughter. Absolutely. Let us get you some. She knelt to Lily's height, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. Are you having fun? The best. This is the best party ever. Lily exclaimed, bouncing on her feet. Let us make it even better, Sarah said, guiding her towards the dessert table with Dan trailing behind them, his expression softened by a smile he wore for Lily. As they reached the table, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She was witnessing a simple yet profound transformation not just in the community, but right in front of her, with Dan and Lily. With a slice of cake in hand, Lily turned to Dan. Do you like chocolate? It's my favorite. Dan chuckled, a hint of tenderness breaking through his earlier hesitation. Chocolate is the best. You have great taste, kiddo. The exchange struck a chord within Sarah. In that moment, she saw the possibility of connection beyond the dinner table, a new beginning not just for the town, but perhaps for Dan and her as well. She never thought she'd see him in such a light, sharing laughter with her daughter, forming bonds with those who once held him at arm's length. But as the night wore on, Sarah felt the subtle undercurrent of anxiety creeping back in. These positive moments felt delicate, almost fragile. What if the connection faltered? What if the community started to distrust again, or if Dan stumbled once more? Can we share the cake? Lily said, her innocent request pulling Sarah from her swirling thoughts. Of course, Dan observed. What do you think, Sarah? Maybe we could share with everyone? It could be a great way to celebrate the evening. Sarah hesitated. What if extending this moment felt like pushing too hard? She studied Dan's eager expression, the small glimmer of hope in his eyes. Was it truly a good idea, or a rushed impulse? The cake could symbolize new beginnings, she finally spoke, trying to balance her caution. But we have to make sure we all come together in doing so. Dan nodded. Let us do it. It could start something great. With that, Sarah felt a wave of excitement ripple through her. The decision was made, and the weight of uncertainty began to lift, opening a door she didn't know was there. Yet, as the cake was carved and laughter filled the air, she couldn't shake the feeling that another storm was on the horizon. Would this newfound unity hold, or would it fracture under pressure? The chatter buzzed on, but tomorrow loomed large, a blank canvas yet to be filled. What revelations awaited them? Would they be able to navigate the challenges ahead together, or was it all just a momentary escape from their truth? Lily bounced with excitement as Dan began to slice the cake. Sarah watched them, a feeling of warmth igniting in her chest as the evening transformed into something magical. The sweet aroma of chocolate wafted through the air, enticing others to gather closer. Sarah's mind whirled with possibilities. This simple act of sharing could blossom into something deeper if they played their cards right. Hey everyone! Dan called, his voice rising above the chatter. We've got cake. Let us celebrate. A buzz of excitement rippled through the gathering. People began to move toward the table, eyes bright with anticipation. Sarah felt a surge of pride for Dan. He was stepping into the light in ways she never thought possible. As she joined the crowd, Sarah caught snippets of conversation, notes of laughter and camaraderie. Her heart swelled. This was what it was all about: connection, rebuilding trust, community. And she could see it happening right before her eyes. Mom, can I help serve? Lily asked, eyes wide with enthusiasm. Of course. You can be the official cake distributor, Sarah replied, ruffling her hair affectionately. Lily beamed, grabbing a plate, standing on tiptoes. She handed slices to neighbors, her small hands barely holding the plates steady. One for you, and one for you. She chirped, delighting in the joy she was spreading. Sarah moved to Dan's side as they watched the small crowd gather, laughter filling the spaces between them. You're really bringing everyone together, she said softly. I couldn't have done this without you, he replied, his eyes sincere. I didn't think I would even have the courage to host tonight. You believed in me. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. His vulnerability struck a chord. They were in this together, these fragile yet vital connections needed tending, just like the delicate slices of cake Lily was serving. But just as the joy bubbled up, Sarah noticed one of the neighbors, Mr. Hawk. A stern man with thick glasses and an even thicker history with Dan. He was lingering at the back, watching with crossed arms, uncertainty etched on his face. A knot formed in Sarah's stomach. Would his distrust shatter the fragile peace they had worked so hard to create? Dan, she whispered, maybe you should go talk to Mr. Hawk. Dan stiffened. You think so? What if he's not ready to forgive? Even if it's hard, it's necessary. You've come this far, you can't hide forever. Taking a deep breath, Dan nodded. You're right. Wish me luck, he said, giving her a determined smile before making his way across the crowded room. As she watched him approach Mr. Hawk, Sarah felt her pulse quicken. The tension was palpable. Would Mr. Hawk accept Dan's reach, or would this go sideways in an instant? Silence fell around them as the two men exchanged words, the chatter fading into a distant hum. Sarah held her breath, praying for understanding. What ripple effects could this moment create? Lily leaned against Sarah, her small frame snug against her mother's side. Is everything okay, Mom? I hope so, Lizzie. I really do, Sarah replied, glancing at her daughter. The seconds felt like hours as Dan's hand gestured animatedly, fear glimmering in his eyes. Then Mr. Hawk's stern expression softened, just for a moment. In that fleeting moment, hope surged within Sarah. Would this be the turning point they all desperately needed? Just then, Mr. Hawk's mouth opened, and the crowd began to lean in, waiting for his response. What would he say? Would this night end with a breakthrough, or would it crash and burn into old grievances? The tension in the room thickened, and all Sarah could do was stand and watch. Look, Dan, Mr. Hawk began, his voice steady but low. It's not easy for me to forget. What you did, it hurt a lot of people, including my family. A murmur rolled through the crowd, the air thickening with anticipation. Dan's grip tightened on the edge of the table as he steadied his breath. I know, Dan replied, his voice edged with emotion. And I'm deeply sorry for the pain I caused. But I'm trying to make things right. I want to be a part of this community again. For a moment, Mr. Hawk's gaze softened, and Sarah felt the tiny flame of hope flicker in her chest. The crowd held its breath, watching with wide eyes. Would they witness reconciliation, or would this turn bitter? I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Hawk said finally, glancing at the crowd. But saying sorry doesn't change the past. Lily shifted against Sarah, sensing her mom's tension. Mom? She whispered, her small voice almost drowned out by the crowd's growing whispers. It's okay, sweetheart, Sarah murmured, keeping her eyes fixed on the men. With Dan's concern, she felt her heart racing. This was a pivotal moment for them all. Fair enough, Dan spoke up, his voice striking a balance between regret and resolve. But I want to earn that forgiveness. I'm here, on the ground, ready to work. Please let me show you I can be better. The sincerity in his tone wrapped around the room like a comforting blanket. Silence filled the air. All eyes remained glued to Mr. Hawk, searching for a glimmer of hope. After what felt like hours, Mr. Hawk sighed deeply. I don't know if I'm ready to fully welcome you back, but I see you trying. That counts for something." The crowd exhaled together almost as if they had been holding their breath for too long. Dan glanced back at Sarah, a mixture of relief and lingering fear in his eyes. He stepped closer to Mr. Hawk. "Can we start small? Give me a chance to prove myself." Mr. Hawk nodded reluctantly. "All right, then. You have a lot to prove. Just remember, trust is built over time." People began to clap softly, the tension lifting. Sarah felt a rush of gratitude and admiration for Dan, who had faced his fears head-on. "Look, Lily," Sarah said, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "Even Mr. Hawk is beginning to see that people can change. Does that mean we can have more cake?" Lily asked, her face lighting up. Sarah chuckled, the sound still mixed with the weight of the moment. "Yes, sweet girl. An extra slice wouldn't hurt." But even as they turned back to the table, Sarah felt a flicker of concern. Mr. Hawk had taken a step, but what would it take for the others to feel the same way? The journey ahead still had many hurdles. As laughter and chatter returned to the gathering, Sarah could sense the fragility of the moment. They were in the first act of a long play, one that would require commitment and patience. Then, as Sarah spotted several neighbors exchanging quiet words, a pang of doubt crept in. Would Mr. Hawk's tentative acceptance open the floodgates for others, or would there be more resistance? "Dan!" Sarah called, her eyes locking onto him as he laughed with a group nearby. She needed him to understand that this wasn't the finish line, it was just the beginning. Just then, the door creaked open, and the familiar sound of unwelcome footsteps echoed from behind. Who could it be? Would this be the surprise that darkened their newly found light? The door swung open, and the atmosphere shifted. Sarah's heart raced as she turned, her breath hitching in her throat. There stood a figure draped in shadows, their silhouette sharp against the bright gathering. The murmurs among the crowd subsided, a dark cloud rolling over the earlier warmth. "Charlie?" Dan's voice broke the silence, an expression of shock painted across his face. Sarah's stomach tightened. The figure stepping into the light was none other than Charlie Baxter, one of the most influential men in town. He was also Dan's old business partner, the one who had walked away without looking back after the fallout. The crowd seemed to ripple with unease, eyes darting between Charlie and Dan. "Didn't he think I'd miss a gathering like this?" Charlie said with a smirk that made Sarah's skin crawl. His tone dripped with condescension, the kind that made even the most confident crumble. "Seems you've decided to make your grand return, Dan. How noble of you." Dan's shoulders squared as he grappled with the sudden tension. "Charlie, I spare us the heartfelt apologies, please." Charlie interrupted, brushing a hand through his slicked-back hair. "Some of us know what happens when you don't think ahead." Lily clutched Sarah's hand tighter, her innocent face confused by the shift in energy. Sarah felt a protective instinct bubble within her, but she forced it down. This was about Dan, not her emotions. "Maybe you should take your own advice," Dan fired back, his voice steady. The undercurrent of past conflict crackled like electricity in the air. "You could have been here to help me face this. But instead, you ran." A smattering of unsure murmurs rose again. Sarah could sense the weight of Charlie's influence, his presence was magnetic and uninvited. "I was smart to avoid this dumpster fire," Charlie replied, eyes gleaming with mischief. "What's really happening here? A trust-building exercise? Does it come with a handbook?" The laughter from his words felt like knives stabbing into Sarah's newfound hope. She glanced up at Dan, whose expression had shifted from determination to uncertainty. Her heart went out to him. There was so much at stake here. "Why are you really here, Charlie?" Dan challenged, his voice low but sharp. "If you've come to gloat, just leave." Charlie stepped closer, weaving through the crowd as if he were the star of a tragic play, every step calculated. It was a dramatic entrance, and he knew it. "Actually, I'm here to protect my investment. Reality check time, Dan. You think this community will forget the damage you've done overnight? You're not the golden boy anymore. The murmuring intensified, as if the crowd was being torn between support for Dan and the haunting truth in Charlie's words. Sarah felt a blast of urgency rise within her. They'd been moving forward, but now the past was rearing its ugly head. Dan has shown up today because he wants to change. Sarah said, her voice rising above the noise. We can't rewrite the past, but we can choose to heal. We can choose forgiveness. The crowd quieted, hearts catching in throats. Charlie smirked, eyes narrowing as he focused on Sarah. And who do you think you are to give him hope? Dan's gaze flicked to Sarah, a mix of gratitude and disbelief. She had stood up for him, but what effect would it have? Sarah took a step forward, determination crystallizing in her chest. This moment mattered, it was ground zero for their future. I'm someone who believes in second chances, Charlie. Maybe you should try it too. Charlie shrugged, instantly dismissing the sentiment, but something flickered in his eyes if only for a moment. As tension and uncertainty skated along the edges of the crowd, the air felt electric. Sarah glanced around, the most crucial decision was upon them. Would they support Dan or allow Charlie's cynicism to darken their community? Just then, Mr. Hawk called out, his voice steady like a lighthouse beacon in a storm. Enough of this. Either we address this with purpose together, or we risk everything we've built here. The decision was looming, palpable. What would happen? Now? Would they rally behind Dan, or would Charlie's words take root, preventing the healing that was so desperately needed? Sarah's heart pounded as the weight of the moment settled. And in that split second, she knew this was only the beginning of a reckoning that would challenge everything they thought they knew about forgiveness and community. Would the crowd choose to unify, or would divisions deepen? The next move was crucial. The silence hung in the air like a thick fog, just waiting to be cut open. Sarah could feel the eyes of the crowd glued to her and Dan. She sensed their hope teetering at the edge of a cliff, just waiting for the right push. Mr. Hawk is right, Dan finally spoke, breaking the tension. His voice was deeper now, laced with fire and passion. It's easy to tear each other down, but that one bring us healing. We need to rebuild this community. A few tentative nods emerged in the crowd, their expressions shifting from skepticism to something that resembled support. But then, Charlie's laughter rolled through the gathering like thunder, loud and mocking. Rebuilding? You think you have the magic blueprint for that? Please, Dan. No one is going to follow you after all that has happened, he sneered, stepping closer to Dan, the distance between them now electric. It's not about what has happened, Charlie. Dan's anger sparked. It's about what we do from here. Lily slipped her hand out of Sarah's, stepping closer to Dan's side, her small frame seemingly drawing strength from his presence. You can do it, Uncle Dan. She piped up, her voice ringing with a sincerity that cut through the tension. Everyone makes mistakes. You just have to try again. Her words resonated through the onlookers. Sarah felt a glimmer of hope flicker in her chest. Children often say the most truthful things, Mr. Hawk smiled gently, clearly moved. We all deserve a second chance. But Charlie wasn't finished. His eyes glinted with defiance as he responded to Lily. And what if he falls again? What if this community ends up worse off? Would you still support him then, little girl? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Sarah saw doubt creeping back into their hearts, like shadows stretching across the ground. Charlie. Sarah interjected, her voice rising again, unwilling to let this moment slip away. Why are you trying to drag everyone down with you? Isn't it easier to let go of the past and lift each other up instead? For a heartbeat, Charlie hesitated, caught off guard by her conviction. You think your words can change anything? He shot back, though the feigned bravado didn't quite resonate as strongly. No. Sarah shook her head, feeling the warmth of Dan's presence behind her. But maybe they can inspire someone. Even you, Charlie. Everyone's at a different point on their journey. What if you could be the change, too? In the crowd, whispers electrified the air, sparking tentative agreement. The hearts of those present were bending, shifting toward a narrow path of understanding. Dan whispered low enough for Sarah to hear. "You're incredible," he said, gratitude shining in his eyes despite the swirling chaos. Before the moment could settle, Charlie's demeanor shifted, his expression faltered as if wrestling with something unnameable. But it was gone as fast as it appeared. He rolled his shoulders back, an impenetrable mask slipping over his face again. "Let's face it, Dan," he said, a tremor of frustration evident in his tone. "You think you can keep the past from crashing down on you? You're deluded." "Maybe I am deluded," Dan replied, his voice steady. "But I'm willing to try, and I'm willing to face my mistakes. I hope you can, too." A stillness followed, one that felt fragile, like a thin sheet of ice on a pond in spring. Sarah could feel the collective breath of the crowd, balancing on the edge of adversity. Slowly, Charlie turned, unable to maintain his fierce demeanor. The uncertainty began to surface. "You want to lift each other up? You better be able to handle the weight," he challenged, but now there was a hint of uncertainty. As he walked away, a visible rift forming between him and the crowd, Sarah felt a wave of fear ripple through her. This might not be over. Will the tears of the past finally let them move forward, or would Charlie pull them back into the storm? In that moment, she realized they were standing on the brink of something monumental, something that could change everything for the town and for Dan. What would happen next? Would they stand together, or would Charlie's shadow loom larger than ever before? As Charlie retreated, uncertainty hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Sarah could feel it swirling around her, weaving through the whispers of the crowd. Some had shifted closer together, exchanging doubtful glances, while others remained planted, their faces unreadable. The weight of Charlie's words lingered, and fear gripped Sarah's heart like a fist. Dan took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the crowd. Sarah felt a surge of empathy, she could see the lines of worry etched on his face. But she also noticed a flicker of resolve return to him. "We can't let this moment slip away," he said quietly, stepping forward and beckoning everyone closer, his voice strong enough to reach beyond the doubt. "Look at us," he continued, gesturing toward the gathering. "We've been through so much, yet here we are. We're still standing. Together." A few heads nodded slowly, as if trying to awaken from a deep sleep. Mr. Hawk's voice broke through the silence again. "Dan is right. We've weathered the storm, but storms can come back. It's how we respond that truly matters." A ripple of agreement began to pulse through the crowd, but Charlie's laughter echoed back, dark and taunting. "Would you look at that? The town is ready to forgive the man who brought it to its knees." He forced a smirk, his eyes glinting like ice. "That isn't true." Lily shouted, her small frame stepping forward again, a lioness defending her pride. "You hurt Uncle Dan, and he helped us all. You don't know how to stand together. You just want to fight." Her sincerity silenced even Charlie for a moment, the sarcasm trapped in his throat. Around them, Sarah could see hesitant nods and even some smiling faces, light breaking through the gray clouds of doubt. "Listen, Charlie," Sarah spoke up again, her voice steady. "Being strong isn't about winning every battle. It's about coming together, learning from our mistakes. And what kind of future does that bring?" He shot back, desperation creeping into his tone. Dan stepped forward, stepping into the space that Charlie had filled. "A future where all of us breathe easy. Where we feel safe again. But it begins with you," he said, casting a glance at Charlie, whose facade began to crack. You can still be a part of this, Charlie. You have to let us in, Sarah added, feeling her heart pound, desperation lacing her hope. We are not against you. We want you here, but you have to decide too. Silence enveloped them once more, heavier now, filled with unspoken thoughts. Charlie shifted uncomfortably, a hint of vulnerability slipping through the cracks of his armor. What if I can't? He muttered, quieter but still defiant. Then we'll carry you until you can, whispered Mr. Hawk, his voice warm and inviting. The crowd collectively leaned in a bit closer, forming a bond that hadn't existed moments ago. Sarah felt a rush of emotion fill her. This was the moment they had all needed. The trust was tentative, but it was real and raw. Charlie's brows furrowed, the storm inside him evident. He hesitated, weighing the friendship against the rage that had guided him for too long. What if it's not enough? He finally muttered, a tremor in his voice. Then we'll build a bigger bridge together. For all of us, Dan replied, unwavering. As Charlie's gaze fell to the ground, Sarah held her breath, waiting for the decision that could change everything. If the fear in his heart could finally be transformed into something stronger, hope might just illuminate their path forward. But as the crowd waited for his response, a distant wail of sirens pierced the air, shattering the fragile peace. The moment felt derailed, the opportunity slipping away. What's happening? Someone gasped. As the noise grew louder, Sarah's heart raced. Was something coming to threaten their fragile unity? Or perhaps, something that might bring unexpected help? The sirens grew closer, echoing in the stillness like a thunderstorm approaching, and with it pierced the veil of quiet courage that had enveloped the gathering. People glanced around, fear creeping back into their expressions. Was this a sign of calamity, another wave of grief ready to crash over them? Stay together, Sarah urged, her voice breaking through the rising panic. Let us see what's happening. Dan stood rigid beside her, his brow furrowed with concern. What could it be? He asked, scanning the street. As the sirens rounded the corner, a fire truck and an ambulance came into view, their lights flashing vibrantly against the darkening sky. Sarah's heart raced as the vehicles slid to a stop, kicking up gravel. A crowd of spectators gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and dread. The atmosphere shifted again, a tangible sense of uncertainty washing over the diners. What now? Charlie's voice dripped with disdain as he stepped back, distancing himself from the trembling crowd. It was impossible to tell if he feared what might come next or if he relished the chaos. But a woman stepped out of the ambulance, her uniform bright and her demeanor composed. What's going on here? She called, her voice carrying authority. We heard there was an emergency. Sarah took a tentative step forward. Just a gathering celebrating community and trying to heal. Then we can help with that, the woman said with a warm smile. I'm Emergency Manager Peters. We can offer support, if you need it. Dan's voice rose above the whispers. Support? Really? We're just trying to make a change here. Can you help with that? Yes, she said, her voice steady and encouraging. We have resources for community rebuilding. Programs for counseling, even ways to fund initiatives. We want to help towns like yours to thrive. Sometimes people don't know where to start. A spark ignited in Sarah's heart. This was exactly what they needed. That's it, she exclaimed. We could work together, create a dialogue about how to move forward. This is the chance we were hoping for. Will you join us? Dan turned back to Charlie, a newfound determination igniting his eyes. We can find a way to make this town better together if you let us. Charlie stood frozen in place. The entire crowd shifted, looking at him expectantly. It was a moment of reckoning, a separation between fear and potential. Well? Sarah breathed, her heart racing. This is your chance, Charlie. For the first time, Charlie seemed to waver. With the sirens safely behind them, he had lost his edge, facing the tide of hopeful community members expecting him to step forward. Maybe he started, his voice quieter than moments before, vulnerability creeping into his demeanor. Maybe we can find a way to work together. But I want to know one thing. What's that? Dan inquired, the caution in his voice belying the hope radiating through his eyes. Can you actually deliver? Charlie looked around at the faces eager for change. Can we truly build bridges, or will it always come crashing down again? There was a moment of silence as the crowd processed his question. Sarah felt a shared connection. All those present had risen above their pasts, were ready to take risks, and risk disappointment for the sake of their community. All we can do is try, a voice piped up from the back. None of us want this place to fail. It's home. Sarah swallowed hard, stepping further into the light. That's right. We've all seen too many hurts and too many divisions. But together, we can start fresh. It's about accountability, understanding, and effort from all of us. Charlie's gaze flicked across the faces surrounding him. Here, in this small town, a chance blossomed against the backdrop of vulnerable fragility. It felt like a fleeting moment, hanging in the air like a suspended note. A slow nod broke the tension as Charlie took a deep breath, visibly letting go of decades of judgment. Fine. Let us show them we mean it, he said finally, his voice steely yet tinged with the weight of possibility. Cheers erupted from the crowd, applause spilling out like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. In that moment, an unexpected transformation swept through the gathering. Everything felt renewed, alive again. Let us work together. Dan raised his hands, rallying the people around him. To foster change and lift each other up. As laughter fused with cheers, Sarah felt her heart swell. This was the culmination of their struggles. Their bridge to healing had finally emerged from the rubble. She caught Lily's eye, her daughter bouncing joyfully, her smile a reflection of every hope they had shared. But as the crowd mingled, and butterflies of anticipation fluttered in the air, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The healing had started tonight, yet the journey would continue, each step taken in unity. Together, we can be more than we ever imagined, Sarah whispered to Dan, who stood beside her, his presence grounding her. Finally, it felt like home, the sweetness of shared laughter and dreams mingling in the air. This was a story of resilience, the power of connection, and the unwavering strength of community. And as they took those first collective steps into the dawn of a new day, Sarah knew that they had emerged not as what they were, but as who they could truly become together. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories as they unfold. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Every click counts. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your share could spark hope for someone else. You've seen the journey. Be part of the change.